I'm Melissa, as she said, and you can see here's my abstract, which is in the book. But really what I'm going to talk about is I tried to flip calculus once in the fall, and I'll talk about mostly failures from that, and then kind of a retry that I did this past spring. My goal is hopefully you'll take away my failures and hopefully successes, any of those that I might have had, and kind of see what I'm doing, and then I'm going to tell you how I'm going to change it even more for this fall. So. First, I'll tell you about my first attempt. So my first attempt was in the fall. This was my first semester at Wingate. I had taught calculus twice before at NC State, but this was my first time teaching calculus at Wingate. Wingate is in North Carolina. It's a small liberal arts school, about 2,700 undergrads. The class met Monday through Friday, but not in your typical way. It meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 50 minutes, but Tuesday, Thursday for 75. So it's almost like you have 6 class periods in a week, which is a lot of time, which is good. This one had 32 students in the fall. I do want to mention that since this is the fall, the students are typically a little bit better at calculus because most of them have taken calculus in high school. So they're a little bit better prepared, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So here was the setup of my first try. So initially, what I wanted them to do is go home every night, read the section. Right? I know that's asking a lot, but go home every night, read the section, work through any examples. On Moodle, every night I would have a quiz. The quiz would have 4 questions. The first 3 were very, very basic. If you read the section, got anything out of it, you're going to be able to answer them. Not that big of a deal. The last question was always, what questions do you have? What did you not understand? What would you like more review over? That kind of thing. From that, so that was due, I think, 20 minutes before class started. From that, that took me into what should I talk about at the very beginning. So at the very beginning of class, I would talk for maybe 10 minutes, depending on how many questions they had, talk for a little while about answering any concerns I might have had. Then the remainder of the class, students worked in groups. I would assign problems, and they had a participation grade. So that was kind of how the class worked. We had weekly quizzes and weekly homework. And then at the end of every class, we had kind of a bring it all back together time. So that was the setup of the class. I had kind of high hopes, but I thought this would work. I went to a talk, I guess it was at Math Fest last year, and this worked for someone else, so I thought it would work for me. Now in the beginning of the semester, we start off with pre-calculus, which is a review. These were the kind of questions I was getting, and I was very, very hopeful. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. You can see some of these. For example, for number 2, I read in the book that you could do linear combinations by multiplying, and you can see they've read the book. Right, this was great. This was all review. Everything was going great. But then we got to material they had never seen before. So then we got to limits, and that's chapter 1. And it looked like they kind of stopped. They were just filling in the blank because it was, if you answered, you got 100. If you didn't answer, you got a 0. The questions were, I should have graded them more, but I didn't know. So what did I do to kind of get over this? I gave many lectures, at least I called them that. It wasn't any different, really, than what the review was. So for whatever reason, they kept complaining about how there was no lecture. So I thought, oh, well, I'm doing a review at the beginning of class. That is a lecture, but they're not seeing it as a lecture, so I'll call it that, but do what I've been doing, if that makes any sense. So what ended up happening is that I would expect them to look at the material, look at the section at least. Then I would lecture on it, shorter than normal, though. And then we would always have class time to do problems. So that was how it kind of changed. It became more of a lecture style, though, so that's more what you're going to keep in mind. My first attempt was starting off, reading each section at night, hoping they got all of it, but then it turned into more lecture and problems at the end of it. Second attempt, so this one was much better. I felt way better about it. It's my second semester at the school. Again, Calculus 1, Monday through Friday, extra 25 minutes on Tuesday, Thursday. Only 23 students this time. But these students have either failed Calc 1 the previous semester, or they took pre-calculus the previous semester, meaning they weren't as prepared for college. So these are a little bit lower level students. So that's kind of important to know here. Now here's what this setup was, and this was my better attempt at flipping. I actually made videos for every section. This was very, very time consuming, but there's a reason I did that instead of just posting like Khan Academy or anything. I think Khan Academy is great. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I think it's great. But I think I'm cheating my students if I just post that. And I know my students well enough to know that they would say I wasn't doing my job, if that makes sense. They would tell me that I wasn't teaching them because it was someone else. So I did my own videos. They were anywhere from 2 minutes to 20 minutes. Depends on the section, but they would have videos to watch every night. Beginning of class, short review, 5 to 10 minutes max. It wasn't very long at all. The rest of the class who worked in groups, I walked around. They had a participation grade every day, and every week they were given quizzes. So I want to kind of compare those two for you real quick. So what this means 1.1, that means first semester, first test. So this is the pre-calculus test, basically. By the time the first test rolls around, all we've done is pre-calculus because I do 6 tests per semester. So a lot of tests. So anyway, this is the pre-calculus test. Now the mean on this one was 79, which seems okay, except that these are students who have mostly taken calculus, have seen pre-calculus before. I expected that mean to be much, much higher. So that was test 1.1. This is part of the reason I changed it, because I didn't expect that to happen. Now, on the other hand, my weaker students who were just watching these videos, the mean was almost 85. So I saw that this was working. I didn't change anything the second semester. I kept the videos, kept the quizzes, everything was exactly the same. Now, in the first semester, this was how I changed it. The extra time, which I've already talked about, participation grade still counts in the group work. So this is after that change in the first semester. The mean jumped up to 85 on the second test, which was a lot better, still pretty good. And this was my second semester, even higher. So during the second semester, I kind of had to back up and say, is this really working? Well, I don't know, but I mean, the test grades show that it was. These are my weaker students getting even better grades than my previous students were. Now, the whole story I don't think is really told by these 2 tests. I think the final exams kind of tell it all. So this was first semester, the final exam. So we started out with kind of the flipped classroom setting, went back to more half lecture, half group work. Their average on the final exam was an 82. And I realized the maximum is a 106. The student didn't do anything wrong at all, got every extra credit possible. I don't know why she didn't take the AP exam, but anyway. So average was about an 82. These were my best students. These are the ones that you kind of hope you get. Second semester was an 83, which I was shocked about. By flipping this and making them do all this in-class work, my weaker students were able to outperform the better students. I also want to do some comments from class. These are all my evaluations. So I know a lot of flipping classroom, people worry about the evaluations, which obviously I was concerned about as a first-year faculty. Right? I can't be playing around too much. But you can see what they wrote. This is from first semester with the one beside it. Interestingly enough, they said that the constant note-taking without use of computers or much technology was boring, which I wanted to write back, but you can't on your evaluation. Well, I tried it, but you told me not to. But anyway, so that was interesting, is that they want lecture, but they also want other stuff. That's what I took away from that. The second semester, they responded to what was most distracting. They said, everything. Teacher didn't teach, basically, is what they said. So I was kind of prepared for this, which I think you have to be if you're flipping a classroom, is that they don't think you're actually lecturing. I guess they didn't take into account it was me in the videos, but whatever. They're freshmen. I'm not too worried about it. So these are kind of the comments that I got. Now on the other side of this, and I think this is a big argument for flipping, you don't need to read the second one, but the first one, basically what she said is that being flexible was the biggest thing. So I can kind of summarize it in that one little phrase. I think that's the biggest part about flipping that I've encountered, is that nothing I thought that would work at the very beginning of the semester actually ended up working. I had to change a lot of things in both semesters, but being flexible was kind of the biggest portion of that. Speaking of the class evaluations, when I finished the spring semester, I thought they hated me. Because I expected them to do so much work out of class. And maybe it was too much work, I don't know. But when I got my evaluations at the end of the course, they were actually higher than the previous one, where we did what they wanted, we went back to lecture. So why am I showing you this? Is that you shouldn't be that afraid, I don't think, of evaluations. Your students might pretend that they hate it, but I don't think it'll really show up that much. Now, how am I going to change? I definitely want to continue with the videos. I think the videos were very helpful. I would like to redo them on better software, but that's neither here nor there. I've been reading a lot about this, and I think the first day of class, what I would like to do is show them the first video. Show them the first video. We're all going to take notes on it, and then we're going to do an example of a 2-minute quiz, which is going to take place every day. They're allowed to use their notes on this 2-minute quiz, but they have to have watched the videos and taken notes in order to do the 2-minute quiz. So the first day of class, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show them the video at least twice. We'll take notes. I'll show them what's expected. They're also going to turn in an assignment each day. So one thing I didn't expect to happen was that students would come in, do the problems, and then say, oh, I'm done, I'll leave. Well, how do you tell someone, no, you can't leave because you haven't done the problem when they said they've done the problem? So anyway, I want them to turn it in each day. And I think this will really help with students leaving a little bit early, because I don't want them to. I know they're going to get something out of staying, so I want them to stay. And then I still want to have formal homework each week. So the assignment to turn in each day will mostly be credit only. The homework will be actually checking very carefully about what they've done. So here's kind of the interactive part. I know we have to have an interactive part of all these talks. I want to show you what my videos look like. Now, I will preface this with saying, I didn't really have that much software to work with, so what I did was a flip video just above a piece of paper, and you'll see it. But here's what an example of what I would expect my students to watch.
So when we were looking at the unit circle, we saw that you can have radians or degrees. Sometimes it's helpful to go back and forth, so we're going to see how to convert radians to degrees and then, vice versa. One thing that we do know about the unit circle is that there are 360 degrees or 2 pi radians. So if you go back to the unit circle that we've been looking at, there were 360 degrees or 2 pi radians. What that means for us is that 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi radians, which we always write as rad. So if we want to convert from one to the other, all we do is set up a proportion. So what you're going to do is set up a proportion and solve for x. For example, let's convert pi radians to degrees. So in this problem, I'm giving you the radians. I want to know how many degrees, so I'm going to have x degrees. So the proportion I'll set up is pi over 2 pi. So the number of radians that I was given over the total number of radians in a circle is how many degrees, that's my x, over the total number of degrees, that would be 360. How do I solve this for x? I'm going to cross multiply. So if I cross multiply, I get 360 times pi is 2 pi x. Now divide both sides by 2 pi, and I'll get 180 degrees. So what that tells me is that pi radians is equal to 180 degrees.
So I'll spare you from having to learn about more converting radians to degrees. What happens from here is I do 3 more examples. I do 1 more converting radians to degrees, and then 2 going backwards. So this is kind of an example of what they're expected to watch, also because I don't want to really hear my voice more. That's weird. So here's a quiz. After watching that, would you be able to answer this quiz if you had 2 minutes? Well, let's start with the first one, and you can just call them out. I trust you know how to do this one. 360 degrees is equivalent to how many radians? Nailed it. What is the abbreviation for radians? Right. So you can see there's a very, very, very basic quizzes. If you took any notes at all, you're going to be able to get 100 on this. What I'm expecting is students to be able to watch the videos, take notes, answer these 2 questions, and then hopefully from that we'll be able to do the problems in class. So some problems in class, these are just 5 of them. We would work on something like this. Also problems out of the book, because I don't want them to pay for this book and then never use it. That's terrible. So problems like this is what I would expect them to be able to do. And these would be done in groups. Usually the groups that I worked with were 2 to 4. Bigger than that, you kind of get in trouble. You don't want anyone working by themselves. So that's what I have. So that's kind of the end. But what I do want to say is for questions, I also am more looking for suggestions and advice. If you have any way you think I could make this better, I would be very interested to know that. Because I do want to make this the best teaching they can be. That's the whole point, right? So yeah, any questions?
My name is JC Price, and I teach a flipped Calc 1 class too, so I'd love to talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
But my question is, where did you post the videos for your students?
So what I did is I posted the link in Moodle, and the videos were uploaded to YouTube. So the reason I did that is because everyone has access to YouTube. Everyone has a tablet and a phone they can watch it on. But also YouTube will tell you how many people have viewed it. And it was very interesting to watch those numbers, especially around test time, because around test time, those videos, the number of views just skyrocketed, and especially right before finals too, just all of them. So yeah, YouTube I thought would be accessible to everyone, so that's what I posted them in.
Anders Hendrickson from St. Norbert College. I haven't flipped a classroom, but I did flip my review session, so I have some similarity. One thing I would say in the realm of suggestion is you talked about how some students, not all, but some of them said, she's not lecturing, even though you obviously were lecturing and more. You've got more contact time with them through this approach. One thing I've discovered is that students are very fickle, and everything depends on how you phrase things.
Okay.
So as my own example, which is not quite the same, I used to do in-class review sessions, and I was bored the whole time, and the students were bored the whole time. And so I took to recording review videos right before the test. And then I would say, okay, you can watch those videos instead of coming to class with me, so class is canceled that day, but I'll hold office hours during that whole time, so if you want to talk live, come see me. And I got all sorts of complaints about how I was canceling class and the videos don't do anything for me, and what kind of a pathetic teacher is this? And so the next semester I did exactly the same thing, but I said, I have made review videos to help you. And we are also having an optional review session at this time. Still, nobody came to the optional review session, but it just went completely into their hearts. He has done all these things, and suddenly, when I phrase it as optional class, so what I would suggest is just experiment with positive ways of phrasing things. So if it may help students to not call them watch the videos, but watch the lecture, or watch my lecture that I gave you. It's funny how much those little phrasings of things will affect the perception students have.
I noticed that the first semester, when instead of calling the first 10 or 15 minutes review, if I just called it a mini lecture, then it changed the whole it didn't change anything, but yeah, I need to look for better phrases. So yeah, that's a good idea. Okay.
The one question I then want to add, if that's okay, is the time management question. I mean, you certainly are extremely lucky, it sounds like, in the amount of class time that you have with the students. But then that also makes me scratch my head and think, where did you find the time to do all that time in class and record all these videos? So how did you manage that question?
So how did I manage to do the videos outside, like actually make them?
Did you just give up sleeping for a few weeks or what?
No. So I actually got very, very lucky with my schedule. I was teaching college algebra for the second time, so all of that was done. There was really no prep for college algebra. So that took away one class. And we have kind of a 3 teaching load. So I was only teaching 3 classes. College algebra, everything's done for. Number theory was my other one. So number theory, I did more of an inquiry-based, which ended up not being as much prep that way. So by not having as much prep for that, I was able to do a lot of prep for calculus. I also took a few weeks right before the semester started to do as many videos as I could. So it was a lot of work, though. I would not recommend it if you have a busy teaching load. Maybe hold off until it's a little bit lighter. It did take a lot of time, though.
I just wanted to add to what you said, because I've done a lot of flipping too. I don't think it's a good idea to let students know that you're experimenting with them. They don't like to be experimented on, and I found it was much better, even if I was doing something for the very first time, to just pretend like I had been doing it for forever, and then the students buy into it.
My only issue that I had with that is that my students talked to their previous calculus friends who were in my class last semester, and I actually had people come up to me and say, so-and-so told me you didn't teach this way last semester. Why are we doing this? And so I'd have to go back, well, this is the better way, and here are all the, so anyway.
Paul Forrester, Alamo Heights High School, San Antonio. A short remark and a short question. The short remark is, I agree with the way you see it and what you call it is important. I never give reviews. I give rehearsals.
Oh, okay.
And when they are rehearsing for a test, then it's important.
Right.
Gosh, this is my chance to get a jump on the test. The second thing is, you said you used the same test the second semester that you used the first semester.
Very similar. They weren't the same test.
Oh, okay.
Similar
I was going
content.
to ask you,
Oh, no,
do
no,
they
no,
have
no.
access to
I
the
will.
test that the
will
last
definitely.
semester kids took? And even if you give something that's the same except for different numbers, there might be some influence there
That's
if they
true.
see the kind of question you ask. And I wondered if you...
I don't think they were similar enough for that.
Okay, that was my concern.
They were similar content in that, I would take each section and decide how many problems from each section I should do. But even if they would have done the previous semester's final, I don't think that would have been any different than doing the review problems I assigned. So that might have been, I didn't think of that though. That might have been playing a part. I also don't think they had enough initiative to go out and find the previous semester's final. But, that's the negative outlook. Right?
Hi, I'm Amber Russell here from the University of Georgia. I had 2 questions, really just clarifications.
Okay.
So for the second model, you didn't do any kind of mini lecturing in the classroom, you just did the group work?
At the beginning of the class, we would do a short review. And if there were any problems I knew were going to happen, that's where I would cover those.
Okay. But did you still do the quizzes beforehand where you asked them what kind of questions they had from the content?
I didn't.
Okay.
I would come in every day, though, and that would be the first thing is, what questions do you have? And if there were no questions, then I would say, well, let's review real quick before we do group work.
And how did you determine the groups?
I let them. There was one day, so in the very beginning, they were real hesitant to do any group work because they don't know anyone. And so for that, I would bring in cards, like playing cards, and hand out some cards and say, oh, all the kings be together and all the queens be together. But then eventually they got comfortable enough where they had their own groups, which worked out fine.
Hi, Jamie Stone, Black Hills State University. You mentioned the group work, but did the groups have to do any presentations then of the work?
They did not, which I would hope to change. There's so many of them. I mean, the first semester, 32 is kind of a lot, so I'm a little bit scared to do presentations with that many. And this fall, it's also going to be around 30. So I don't 100% know how I can make that happen. Do you happen to know about how to make, 30 people is a lot to me to do presentations for each group. But one idea is maybe take Fridays and have Fridays be presentation day, because we do have enough time. We have plenty of time. So yeah, I want to do presentations, I'm just not sure how. They did. They did the same problems, but at very different paces. So I would have one group working on one section and one group working on a completely different section. So it really depended on everyone, really.
Hi, Zoe Dai from Alma College. I'm actually completely ignorant when it comes to a flipped classroom. Yesterday was the first time at JC's talk that I learned exactly what it was. I guess my question is, sounds like from your personal experience, the videos, they are critical. I watched a little clip of JC's videos after I got back to my room talking about Nimitz, and honestly, I was like, oh, this is wonderful, like crystal clear. The only thing if I can nitpicky something, I would say, I don't like your handwriting, JC. It was just like, I could write better. But see, that's the only thing. I guess, in the spirit, we're a community, right? We talk about, like, we don't want to reinvent the wheels.
Right.
So if there are already great videos out there, why does everybody need to spend or invest all this time and energy to basically do your own videos? When we're in the classroom, each individually talking about Nimitz, we get that, interaction with the students, and we, the Q&A and the anecdotes, the jokes. But when you're like watching a video, those things will all removed. So if there is a crystal clear video like his, why do I guess I'm trying, like, those people
Why does everyone do their own?
Right. Beyond, students will say, well, it's not yours, it's this professor's.
Right.
You didn't teach the class, I'm learning from this professor. If we go beyond that, what is is it cost effective? I guess this is the answer to you and more to those of you who had experiences with it.
For my time, probably not. I'm sure I could be doing research or something else, but I do know my students, especially that first semester, when they were reading on their own, they were so mad at me that I wasn't taking my time to invest in their learning. And that was a big problem, is that they felt that I didn't care as much because I wasn't the one teaching them. So that's why I do. I have no problem posting someone else's video, and I think that's fine to do. But for my students, I want them to feel like I'm invested as much as I possibly can. I think that's the main reason I do my own videos.
My name is Minnie Capaldi, and I wasn't going to talk about that, but I will just mention I did not make my own videos. I wrote my own notes and typed it up, but I had one comment maybe on evaluation saying they wished I'd made my own videos. It wasn't a big deal. I think maybe because I was typing my own notes, but
Maybe it's just my students. Maybe they just, I mean, I don't know.
I know a lot of people have that comment. I was actually going to mention something about the student presentations. I flipped Calc 2 last semester, and I had a pretty large class size, almost 30. And I don't think you have to have every group present every problem, so I had a stack of note cards with each student's name on a note card, and I would just randomly draw one student and tell them to present the problem, and then I would write the date on their note card.
Oh, okay.
And by the end of the class, everybody had presented twice.
Okay. How much of their grade was that? Because I know if it's not part of their grade, they're not going to take it as seriously as they should.
Yeah,
which is the reality. but-
Overall participation, I think, was probably around 10%. So that
Okay.
included attendance, working in your group,
And these
the
presentations. Okay.
I didn't end up taking points off of anybody because they all went to the board and tried.
Not to keep asking you
So-
questions, but did you give them the feedback for these presentations, or was it just for you?
No, I didn't give them any feedback, which is maybe something I would change in the future.
Okay.
But I didn't for that semester.
Regina Jackson, Auburn University. I don't normally do flipped classrooms. I'm trying to do more of the inquiry stuff, but I have done them, and I do them for online teaching a lot as well. I don't use my own videos, but it takes just as much, if not longer, to find quality videos that I like as it would if I made my own. So that's why I make my own videos.
Mylan Sherman, Drake University. I've been doing a flipped classroom for Calc 1 for 2 or 3 years now, and one thing that I found, kind of going back to the comment that your students made, and just kind of the changes you're making from one semester to the next, something I found has worked really well is like basically an anonymous midterm evaluation, and I do it after the first exam, because I can tell them how things are going to be different and why I'm doing it on the first day of class. But after the first exam, I think that's when they're ready to give me that feedback.
Yeah, actually, going to all these talks has really helped. I wish I would have waited until like last night to write this. But another thing I'm thinking about is test reflections. So like 24 hours after the test, either email me or upload something that's, how much work did you put into this test? How are the lectures going for you? What do you want to change? What do you like? That kind of thing.
I asked them on each aspect of the course what seems to be, how effective is it in helping with their learning. And I think they're really, they take it very seriously, because unlike the end of the term evaluations, these are evaluations that can actually influence the course they're in. And there's some things I'm very intentional about that I'm not going to change, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about why we're doing them. And there's other things that are good ideas, and I make those changes. But I think just them feeling like they're being heard, whether the changes are made or not, that you're responding to them and you're listening to them, I think goes a long way when you're trying to do something that they're not used to.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely do something like that.
I wanted to respond to her, what she said. If you're thinking about flipping in class, I think it's very important that those of you that do make videos, because I think this is sort of a new medium for us to work in. And I think it's how sort of, new ideas, new things develop. You watch somebody else's video, you get ideas. Like when I made videos, I watched Khan Academy, and I'm like, they do it all in black. I don't like black. I work on a whiteboard. I want white. What sort of technology software am I going to use? So everybody sort of does it in their own way and style, and you kind of learn from that. And there are not a ton of videos out there. It's sort of like Khan Academy made their videos, and everybody sort of kind of copied that mold. Like when I went out to make videos, I went on Khan Academy's website, and they had like a bio of how they made those sort of videos. And I just sort of used that. And I think it would be great if everybody started to sort of make videos, and you don't have to flip your whole class. You could flip like one exam or something, and just get it out there so we can all see what people's ideas are, because the videos can definitely be better than they are now.
Allison Marr. So I'll also respond that my students really appreciate having the videos come from me. So when I've done this in a flipped calculus and stats class. And also I tailor them, like I'll say, so yesterday we did this in class, which means I likely can't use them again. So that's kind of painful for me. But I think they then appreciate, right? They know it's me, they know it's something that I'm responding to that happened in class. And my only other comment, just thinking, I've done the same similar thing that you have, but someone mentioned at a conference recently about to make this further inquiry-based, right? Instead of posting a video about the new content, right? Have them discover the new content in class and think about making a video of further examples. Like, so flipping a little bit, and sort of getting more of that inquiry-based back in the classroom is something
Thanks.
that I've been thinking about.
Thank you. Let's thank our speaker.